God, nice to have you with us on a Monday afternoon. It's the second day of April 2018. Good to have you aboard. Hi, everybody. Yours truly, Christopher Russo. Kicking off a broadcast week and a day here on the great SiriusXM 82. 888 Mad Dog 6, two-way sports talk telephone number. You know that. Eddie Erickson and Colin Schmeling in the house here today. Steve, a little bit later on, we'll get him on for an update as we have some fun here and talking about what's going on as far as the world of sports is concerned. Off a busy weekend. Hope your Easter was good. Passover, whatever the case might be. We are non-religious here in this radio program, so whatever God you bow down to is fine by me. Hopefully you had a decent religious weekend if that's the case. As we chat, lots to do this week. Busy program. We have obviously the NCAA. You got some baseball. You got the Masters. We'll do Armin Katayan and Jeff Benedict a little later on. Looking forward to that in studio. 5 o'clock on Tigers, so we'll get involved as far as that is concerned. We're not sure if Coach K is calling us today early. Bill has disappeared. He's got issues in Chicago, and so nobody knows where Bill is. And I didn't even know Bill was leaving the midday program until last night about 8, 9 o'clock when I sent Eddie on a wild goose chase to track down Ian Poulter. And Bill was nowhere to be found, and Eddie said, I'm not going to be able to do this tomorrow because I'm working Steve's program. So I don't know, and Bill's in charge as chef, so I don't know where we stand. So I'll start the program from a standpoint of analysis, and then we'll see if Coach K is there. If he's not, fine, we'll move it along. If he is there, I'll break in and go right to him. I'm not too sure what to say about the Saturday games are concerned. That was not a big Final Four. I was stunned the way the game turned around with Michigan and Loyola, but the game was not a big game and not a good game. Bad first half, not a good ending. The switch there in momentum with about 10, 11 minutes to go was startling because it looked like Loyola was in excellent shape with a 10-point lead, and then the game just, fell apart on them. The Michigan defense was the key. They did a great job. Loyola, of course, had trouble scoring. Michigan made some huge threes. The center kept them in the game throughout the whole ball game, played great, and then he made a big shot in the corner. Duncan Robinson made a big shot, and Michigan got the job done and won the game going away. It was an okay game. It wasn't a great game. It was an okay game. That's the best way to explain it. Okay is where it was. And then Villanova played like Villanova. I mean, when they play like that, they can't be beaten. They're by far the best team in the country when they play like that. Duke wouldn't have beaten them either. Duke's got more firepower than Kansas, so who knows? But Kansas got run out of the building, right out of the gate. I believe the game was 22-4. Somebody said it was 22-2. I thought it was 22-4. And Kansas really never made any kind of run at them the rest of the day. I mean, I think they got it down to 11 a couple of times, but never once did you think that Kansas was ever going to win that game or make a game of it. I was actually surprised. A lot of people thought Kansas was going to be a factor. I know Raph sounds like he thought Kansas would be in the game. Grant Hills sounded like they thought Kansas was going to be in the game. A couple of people I talked to last week, Bob Wenzel, I never thought it. I never thought Kansas would have a chance to win that game. Villanova's too good. They got 5 guys who can score. They shoot the ball wonderful from 3. They were 18 for 40 there on Saturday. They were great early in the game, 6 of their first 10. He goes 7 deep. He plays 8 guys. The 8th guy doesn't score. The kid from Philadelphia. The other 2 kids can score. DiVincenzo can score. The other kid off the bench, Gillespie, can score, can make a shot. And then, of course, the 5 starters can do their thing. They got some seniors on the team. They got the kid Spellman, who's a freshman, who's had a great year. Pasquale, the transfer from Fordham, was superb in the game. He didn't miss a shot. He had 24 points. I mean, they didn't really have to get out a lot. They didn't have to get a lot out of Brunson. They didn't have to get a lot out of Bridges. I mean, they killed Kansas. And that's all there is to it. They killed them. I mean, Kansas did nothing in this game. And Kansas had a very good year. And Kansas, normally you'd say that Kansas is going to have to win one of these championships sooner or later, but Kansas had a good year. I mean, Kansas doesn't have a lot of not as much talent as we've seen in the past. They lost Jackson, the number 1 pick, and went to the Suns. So, I mean, it's not like Kansas has got a million players as their little guard went to the Kings. So it's not like they have as many players. They lost a couple of big players off that team, but I was not impressed. I did not think Kansas, from a personnel standpoint, to me, they can't line up with Villanova. Villanova's got themselves in a situation where they are in between right now. They don't get the one-and-done kid, but they don't get a bunch of kids who can't be pros either. They're right in the middle, and that's the way you want to be in college basketball. You want to be a situation where you have borderline pros, maybe a couple of players like a lottery pick deal like Bridges, but who need a couple of years of college. And that's where Villanova is. They get the in-between players. They get the most of both worlds. They have some experience because their players stay more than 1 year, so they're not influenced by one-and-done kids who got one eye out the door come January. So that's a big advantage. And they have kids who are good enough to play in the NBA. The Josh Harts of the world, left from 2 years ago. So they're really in a perfect scenario. Bridges is going to be a lottery pick. Now, he's not going to be a great pro, but he'll be a lottery pick. You know, he'll be a top 10 pick in the draft. Brunson, probably a second-round pick, we'll see. And then Pasquale will come back. Spellman will come back. The other kid will come back. I mean, they got a couple of pros on their team and who've been there a while. And that's all you need. And they got a great coach in Wright. And they got a deep enough bench with the 7 players. And Villanova is going to, I know, let's be honest, they're going to be, they would be a big surprise that they lost tonight. Now, listen, they had no issues with Kansas. I thought Kansas, I did not think Kansas was going to win the game. I thought maybe a little more competitive, but I certainly didn't think Kansas was going to win the game. I was thinking back to the game 2 years ago. Sometimes those games, come around the other way when you beat them barely, as they did Villanova 2 years ago when they knocked out Kansas on their way to their first championship. I thought maybe Kansas get a little revenge, and maybe if the game was close, they get a bouncer too late to win. That obviously wasn't the case. One of these days, Villanova is going to play a close game. The one game they didn't shoot well in this tournament so far against Texas Tech, they still won by a dozen. They were 4 for 24 from 3 in that game, and they still won the game going away 71-59. So it seems like Villanova can beat you any way they want to beat you. You want to play a low-scoring game, keep the possessions at a minimum. They have no problem with that. If you want to make sure that you go up and down with them, they scored 90 against West Virginia. They have no problem with that. And if they shoot the ball well, you can't beat them. So I don't know what Michigan is going to do tonight to win the game. Again, these games are weird. It's only one, but if this is a best of 7, Villanova winning 5 games, and there may be a sweep. I mean, that's what it comes down to. If they were playing an NBA-style best of 7 series, Michigan would lose in 5 games, and maybe they would get swept. That's the difference of talent level between the two squads. Now, the one thing I will say is Villanova will probably not shoot the ball as well as they did the other night tonight. You would think that they're not going to make 17, 18 threes tonight. You would think. And the other night, again, I think it was 18 of 40. I might be wrong. It may be 17 of 41, whatever it was. I mean, they were a major factor from 3. And I don't think that, you can't expect them. You know the way the 3 ball goes. The one day you make them, and then the next day you can't throw the ball in the ocean. So, I mean, that's an erratic shot where, you can look bad shooting a million of them and the ball doesn't go in. So you keep that in mind when you evaluate this game. And Villanova's coming off a beautifully shot game, so you wonder if they can do it again. That's the one thing that would worry me a little bit if I was Jay Wright, because you can't expect though to be that good again from that standpoint. But by the same token, I don't think the center from Michigan is going to play as well either. He kept him in the game. The kid from Germany kept him in the game early. He made a lot of threes. He's a pro. He's a 7-footer who can shoot threes. I mean, guys like that are going to play in the NBA. That's all there is to it. When you're over 7 feet tall, and you can make threes, you're going to play in the NBA, because a big kid who can make threes is tough. He did a good job defensively. He got his rebounds. He kept him in the game in the first half when Loyola played pretty well, up 29-21 at the break, and he did a good job. He kept Michigan in it. So, I mean, now he played really well on Saturday. I don't expect him to play quite as well tonight. So that would be a bad sign out of Beeline what to expect out of him, because they need him to be great again to have a chance to win a game. Villanova will play good defense. Michigan will play good defense. Beeline's a good coach. Wright's a very good coach. Beeline obviously has been in his championship game before. Wright's won his championship game before. So no edges from a coaching perspective. Beeline's one of the top 5 or 6 coaches in the sport. And Jay Wright is top 3 right now with Krzyzewski and Roy Williams. He's right there, top 3 in the sport. Maybe Izzo in the mix too. So, I mean, when you get right down to it, there's not a lot of edges that Michigan has in the game, the way I see it. As a fan looking at the team, and we have seen Michigan play here throughout the tournament. We have obviously seen Villanova play. Plus, I don't like the way Michigan has been fortunate with their bracket. I mean, let's be honest. They got through the Western bracket, which is by far the worst bracket. Xavier was a very poor 1 seed. We all knew that going in. They got picked off in the second round. And Michigan had an easy draw. I mean, they should have lost to Houston, who was the 3rd team in the AIC, or maybe the 2nd team after Cincinnati. Cincinnati, Wichita State and Houston sort of right there at the neck and neck. But they beat Houston, and they were fortunate to get out of that game. Remember, they missed the 2 free throws the Cougars did. 4 seconds to go, up 2, which was the biggest difference in the game. Then they came down, Poole made the 3 to win it. But they didn't play. They played great against A&M. That was the Thursday last week in L.A. when they played the Saturday before that when A&M played in Charlotte the Sunday before that against Carolina. So I think that travel had a little something to do with it for the result of the regional Sweet 16 game, because A&M was out of it, and obviously Michigan did a tremendous job. And then of course the game against against Florida State, which what it was. Florida State can't shoot, Michigan, but they have great athletic ability, and they had the offensive rebounds and everything else. And Michigan had to work hard in that game, but Florida State's not a good offensive team. They scored in the mid-50s, and Michigan in their sleep with the offense they run, they're going to score 60 points a game. So there you go. They scored 69 the other day. They scored 59, 60 against Florida State. I mean, and they scored a whole bunch against Texas A&M. But you get the idea. They beat Montana, Houston, Texas A&M, and Florida State and Loyola to get to this point. That's not a juggernaut. That's not a who's who of teams to that point. Let's keep that in mind with Michigan. I think that plays into it tonight. The spread is 7. You never like to give that many points in a championship game. You do to have a good game. The Final Four, you've had really one good game in the last 2 weekends. That was Kansas and Duke. I can't think of that many other great games. I mean, the Florida State game with Michigan was ugly. The Kansas State, Loyola, the Kansas State Kentucky game was ugly. A lot of missed free throws. You really haven't had. You had a great first couple of rounds, but you haven't really had a lot going on the last 2 weekends. And they had, I think myself, a bad Final Four. That was not a good Saturday of college basketball. I did not see the ratings. I'm sure they got pounded. Obviously, the deadly combination of being on TBS and then having the night game be a disaster is a problem. I went to bed with 3 minutes to go in the game. I went to bed. 3 minutes to go in the game, I went to bed. At whatever the score was. I don't even know. They were up 14, 16. The game was over. So that's what you need to know. If I did that, so did a lot of other America. They changed the channel. And that hurts the rating. So I'm sure they did bad Saturday. We'll see about tonight. There's not a ton on tonight. There's not a ton of baseball on. A lot of snow outs for the local markets like New York. It's 9:20 start. It's too late. A lot of kids are off from school this week. I don't know. We'll see. The closeness of the game will help, but the fact that the Villanova North Carolina game was the lowest rated championship game they've had in 10 years, and that was a great game, but it was on TBS, and that hurts. The game competitiveness tonight, though, is what we're looking for. And if you're asking me with 5 minutes to go if this is anybody's game, the answer is no. I'd be surprised. I don't think Villanova will play as well as they did against Kansas, but I don't know if Michigan is good enough to take advantage. Make a long story short. I don't know. I'll pick this like the Texas Tech game. How about 75-62 Villanova? 16 after the hour, 17 after the hour. Good to have you aboard on a busy Monday on Mad Dog.